Hey guys, all good? Real Madrid is, once again, champion of the Champions League, champion of the 23-24 season, beating Borussia Dortmund at Wembley. Another title, the 15th, for a dominant Real Madrid. If we look at the number of titles won in recent times, especially from 2014 to now, it is impressive how Real Madrid is always present, always managing to go far, always being a very tough team to beat. Even when it is overcome, it is difficult to beat. And this happens sometimes even in less likely situations. This was a final that had clear favoritism, broad favoritism on Real Madrid's side. Of course, favoritism does not mean a game won before it starts. Now, it was very difficult to imagine Borussia Dortmund being superior in the way they were in the first stage, the way Borussia Dortmund won duels, managed to disorganize at times, Real Madrid's defensive sector, creating clear situations with deep passes, preventing Real Madrid from having comfort and control of the ball, and at the same time preventing Real Madrid from having escapes at speed, especially with their most dangerous player, who is and was once again Vinicius Jr. I'm going to get into the subject of Vinicius Jr. right away, because he is obviously a subject in his own right, a great protagonist, and is already generating a huge impact on individual awards. But first, let's talk about the game as a whole. It was very impressive how Borussia Dortmund, despite being somewhat predictable, managed to face it and play on equal terms. We get into that dilemma of what is predictable and unpredictable within Real Madrid games. It was expected that Real Madrid would be more dominant against Borussia Dortmund, which did not happen. But it was to be expected that, if Borussia Dortmund were as superior as they were in the first half and didn't turn this into an advantage on the scoreboard, they would end up paying dearly for it later on, because Real Madrid are usually like that. And we get into the issue of predictable scripts and how Real Madrid transforms unpredictable feats, twists and turns into something almost expected within games, because it has happened so often. You can't say it was epic like it was, for example, when Joselu shone against Bayern in the semi-final. That was a separate chapter. This time, it was Carvajal who appeared to head the goal, at a time when Real Madrid had already improved in the game. It is true that the second half was more balanced and even had more presence from Real Madrid in the offensive field. Today, I won't go into the tactical aspects so much. It won't be possible to play small fields, even for reasons of speed, in order to record the video. I was unsure whether I would be able to post it, but in order not to miss out on making a video about such an important game, I'm going to point out some topics here more randomly than talking specifically about the game's tactical plan. Borussia Dortmund's game was very good. There were some characters, and naturally, from Real Madrid's point of view, expectations were greater. It would be the team that would dominate, that would impose itself, that would create a lot. How could Borussia Dortmund compete against Real Madrid with this disparity? One of the biggest in recent times in terms of Champions League finals. Everyone imagined, or most imagined, a lot more Borussia Dortmund surviving and counterattacking. That's not exactly what happened. Borussia Dortmund managed to play, face, equalize, and work the ball well in moments of exit, finding passes to make certain fits difficult. Real Madrid had a lot of difficulty in the first half adjusting how to make this marking, especially because Maatsen was centralizing the left back, often working inside. This allowed other players, in a slightly more advanced lane, like Henrichs, to drop between the defenders. At this second height of the field, Borussia Dortmund found passes, found their players, and more than that, one of the most interesting things about Borussia Dortmund's campaign in the Champions League was the way the team managed to use movements without the ball, often for shots. Long. Sabitzer was a great highlight of the Champions League and, for me, the big name of the first half, perhaps along with Hummels, who was very good in the match. The way in which Sabitzer became a target for these more direct connections, and Füllkrug, in particular, even managed to win duels well up front, hold the ball, create situations, create danger, demanding from Courtois, who is also another character that deserves to be remembered. But Sabitzer was one of the symbols against Bayern and now once again. Precisely because of these bursts, and Borussia Dortmund knew how to exploit these movements that took players out of position. In the first 15 to 20 minutes of the game, the feeling I had was very much of a game in which the defenders were getting the better of the defensive duels. Mendy and Carvajal managed, until then, to avoid deep passes, cutting passes inside. Then we saw how Adeyemi grew and began to become an outlet that, in terms of speed, would beat Carvajal and create dangerous situations, starting with that great deep pass from Hummels. Hummels and Schlotterbeck had freedom for these first passes and are defenders who build play from behind well. So, Borussia Dortmund had shooters with time for this pass to go in, and Real Madrid had a lot of difficulty correcting and avoiding these escapes from Borussia Dortmund, usually on the right. Adeyemi would centralize or lower himself to get more play, and, as a result, at various times he would take away the reference or make Mendy leave his position. Mendy is generally very strong in direct defensive duels, but he was not always positioned back there, precisely because of Borussia Dortmund's movements, which allowed sprints, for example, from Sabitzer to receive in an empty space. Little by little, Real Madrid declined. Borussia Dortmund started playing too. It wasn't just dueling defensively. And Real Madrid was a little unrecognizable in the sense that the players from whom most were expected played a very dull game. The first half was discreet. In touching the ball, Toni Kroos was participating a lot, but he was unable to have any influence from the point of view of giving control and making Real Madrid's game more fluid. Likewise, Bellingham had a rather lackluster final, although in the end he appeared with the assist for Vinicius Jr.'s goal. The first half was well below. Rodrigo was also below. Vinicius Jr., here it is important to differentiate, had a lower effectiveness in the first half, but at no point did he stop trying. This is one of Vinicius Jr.'s great merits, to keep trying, to always be a threat. This time, he took his time, and in the first half he may have managed to take the lead, but credits to Rudiger, credits to Henrichs, who was on the wing there too. So, Borussia Dortmund managed to block the corridor well, which is very difficult to stop. In fact, Bellingham played on the left in the first moment of the game. Then there was a lot of alternation with Bellingham going inside, Rodrigo going to the right wing, Vinicius going to the left wing, due to this difficulty in adjusting without the ball. Maybe a player who was a little beaten, because as I said, we would naturally look at the great pillars of Real Madrid this season and talk about Rudiger, who made good defensive interventions. Nacho suffered a little in the more direct duels there with Füllkrug, who was also playing an important game for Borussia Dortmund. But so, the pillars that would make Real Madrid more dominant in the game were not working. Neither Kroos, nor Bellingham, nor Rodrigo, nor Vinicius, although Vinicius was clearly the one who tried the most from the first moment, and this was to Borussia's great credit. Dortmund. In addition to stopping Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund was dangerous when they accelerated, when they arrived, creating chances. And then Courtois appeared too. Courtois returned to Real Madrid's goal, not now because he had already returned in the Spanish Championship, but in the Champions League he hadn't played yet. So, there was a bit of that thing that it could be the perfect script to be crowned with a great performance, or a perfect script for a catastrophe too, of ending up failing and being the goalkeeper who once shone like he shone in that Champions League final against Liverpool. So, it was a risk, but it was that choice that the coach always has to make. There was still the issue of Lunin missing training during the week, but that decision had already been made. Courtois is Real Madrid's starting goalkeeper. He ended up appearing well in several moments of the game. In the second half, Kobel appears well too, with some good saves. In the first half, he practically didn't need to work. In the second half, yes, let's talk about a Real Madrid that managed to compete a little better. And what I was talking about these protagonists a little below, I think that the player who managed to be very important in the game all the time for Real Madrid was Valverde. Valverde is the guy who often gives that balance to the midfield, a guy who moves up as a second midfielder, sometimes even plays as a winger, but a guy who gives mobility and a different dynamic to Real Madrid's midfield. He was perhaps, alongside Courtois, the one who best stood out over the 90 minutes. And then, of course, let's talk about the final stretch of the game and the decisions made by the two coaches. And the big turning point was there in the final stretch with Vinicius' move, who once again managed to take the advantage in a short space. Vinicius managed to go deep, as he had to, without the possibility of triangulation, without the possibility of combination. And in an individual move, he got the assist for Carvajal to score the goal. In fact, Carvajal was out of position. So, he even had the idea that he was a player who had to go to the area when Vinicius had the ball, and Bellingham had deflected it. Carvajal managed to enter the area and score the winning goal. Of course, there, Real Madrid, after scoring the goal, defended itself, not worrying so much about attacking. Borussia Dortmund tried again to create, but failed to threaten much. Courtois even made a save on top of the line from Hummels' header. Now, Speaking of the coaches, Camavinga's replacement ended up being very important. He managed to give a different dynamic to the team. He managed to allow Real Madrid to breathe better, win more duels in midfield, and of course, bring a balance to the team that sometimes Cruz, due to fatigue, could no longer provide. So, at the end of the day, it is a very deserved title for Real Madrid. I know we already expected this. It is Real Madrid's 15th Champions League title. That's an impressive thing. We look and see a team that can maintain this consistency in the Champions League. And now, of course, a title that also has a main character, Vinicius Jr. Today, campaigns will begin to have him elected the best player in the world, the Ballon d'Or. He's already a protagonist. I think there is already a construction of the best player of the season in the Champions League. He was the big name for Real Madrid this season and, without a doubt, he is a main character for Real Madrid. One of the best players in the world, perhaps the best player in the world this season. This title for Real Madrid brings back the Real Madrid that has always been dominant in Europe. Even when he looks less dominant, he is still very difficult to beat. Even when it seems like you won't make it, you end up making it. And this is Real Madrid in the Champions League. A team that can find solutions on the pitch, find players who show up and make a difference. Today it was Vinicius with the assist and Carvajal with the goal. But it is a Real Madrid that always finds someone who shines and who always manages to emerge victorious, even in the most unlikely situations. That was our summary of the Champions League final. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment what you thought of the final, who was the highlight for you. If you think Vinicius deserves to be the Ballon d'Or, if you think Real Madrid deserve this title, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys.